Good afternoon, Starfleet officers and other individuals. Welcome aboard the USS Corinda. And I've had a special request, but you know the old joke, but I'm going to show you anyway. I've had a special request to talk about this figure. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard in his formal dress uniform. So, welcome to the first of what might be more Federation Fridays, or I'll call it Federation Figure Fridays, because if I do reviews, I'll post them on Fridays. So, Federation Figure Friday, and the first figure we're going to look at is Jean-Luc Picard in his Starfleet dress uniform. And like I said, I've had a request to do this, but I've also been inspired by a couple of other people. There are a few friends of mine who have inspired me to actually follow through and make this video talk. One is a fellow by the name of Johnny Shedrick, and his YouTube channel is MIB Master Toy Museum, and he's a fine curator over there. He makes video reviews of his mint in box, which is what MIB means, mint in box figures, all the time. He's got hundreds and hundreds of figures. Great channel if you are a toy fan or a mint in box collector on almost any genre. His channel is one to check out. Another friend of mine, Ray, has a great channel called Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. And he does great reviews too and talks about his figures. Most of his stuff is monster related. So if you're into that, you can check out his channel too. So, inspired by those two gentlemen, as well as the person who wanted me to talk about this figure, we will discuss Playmates Star Trek Collector's Series, the Starfleet edition, of Captain Jean-Luc Picard in his formal Starfleet dress uniform, which is very different than the duty uniform he used to wear, that he would wear more often on the bridge. This particular uniform, he would wear, if there was a special ceremony or some formal event on board the Enterprise, or if there were dignitaries, just a special occasion. Anything where you'd have to wear more formal attire than your standard day-to-day duty uniform, Picard would wear this, his dress uniform. Now, I am not a mint in box collector. MIB is mint in box. MOC is mint on card. I do have some figures mint on card. I also collect the 4.5-inch Playmates figures. I've got almost 200 of those. About 50 of them are still MOC, mint on card. But that's because I have duplicates, Generally, I like to open up my figures, which brings me to this figure still being mint in box. It is factory sealed with the original tape and seal, just like it was the day it was made, which I believe was 1995. Let's take a look at the back. I'm sure that's correct. Yep. There it is right there, if you can see. 1995, Paramount Pictures. So this figure is almost 30 years old, which is amazing because it's still in great shape. So if I'm not a mint in box collector, you're probably wondering, why do I have this figure still mint in the box? Well, this is Playmates 9-inch line. These figures are 9 inches. And I have 5 of them. 4 of them I've opened up. They're out of the box. I've handled them. I've posed them. I've put their accessories in their hands. But this one I haven't opened up. This was a gift to me by my good friend Juliana. She sent this to me as a gift because she knows I'm a huge fan of Picard. And I love it. I love this figure. I'll never part with it. But the dress uniform on Picard is not my favorite uniform on him. He wore it a few times in the show. In fact, maybe now's a good time to put up a picture. So, like with the powers of Q, here's a picture. There. Now there's a good example of what the uniform looks like when Picard wore it on the show. You can see, actually what you can notice is that the length of the uniform has changed over some of the episodes. You'll notice sometimes it's right down to his knees, and sometimes it's much higher actually, but it's the same style of uniform. It's got the gold piping and the pips further down the shoulder. On his regular duty uniform, the pips are up in the Mandarin collar. And actually, if you look on that picture on the left, you'll see the gold piping actually goes right down the entire length of the uniform. So there were subtle changes as he wore it over a few episodes. But that's what it looked like. And you can see how well this figure sort of has captured that, because it looks good. It's a very good likeness. I have a great picture of Picard in his ready room. Let's put that up here now, and you can see what there. See, that's a great shot. Picard in his dress uniform, in his ready room, with that fantastic painting of the Enterprise D up there. Not sure exactly which episode this photo's from, but it's great. Anyway, here we have Picard in his dress uniform. Now, the duty uniform was different. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out my loose figure, because I have Picard wearing his regular duty uniform. And there it is. So you can see what he looks like when he's wearing his regular duty uniform. I might do a video separately about this figure, but it's got the the black on the yoke, the shoulders, and the upper part. You can see the Mandarin collar, which goes up his neck a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell, but there's actually red piping. There it is. You can see it sort of there. Red piping right along the top. You see that? And he's got his 4 pips, denoting his rank as captain. Now, of course, in seasons 1 through 3, this was a one-piece, tight spandex uniform that was very uncomfortable for the actors. And by all accounts, their smell couldn't really, their body odor wasn't very pleasant. And also it was so tight that it caused some of them discomfort, actually. Stuart in particular had back problems, and part of the reason why they changed the uniform to this in season 3 is because it was 2 pieces, the tunic and the pants, and far more comfortable for the actors, with some subtle changes to the design, and it certainly looked better. But anyway, the reason why I have this out here is you can compare his regular duty uniform to this dress uniform. So the dress uniform hangs much lower, there's no black around the waist, and it's got this wonderful gold piping here. So one day I'll talk about Picard's regular uniform in more detail. But here we have Picard in his dress uniform. Now, getting back to the mint in box topic again, there are 2 schools of thought. There are those collectors who like to collect mint in box, like the 2 gentlemen I mentioned. My friends Johnny and Ray, they are strictly mint in box collectors. Most of their stuff is minty fresh, just like this, factory sealed, and they're never going to take it out of the box. They have no intention of doing that. And I understand the mindset of that, There are advantages and disadvantages to keeping it in the box or taking it out of the box. One major advantage, I think, to keeping it in the box is if you ever decide to sell the figure, it's worth more when it's unopened, because the new owner can then decide whether they want to keep it in the box or open it up. And also, and I guess I could say my friends make good points sometimes, because Ray had once said that the cool thing about a figure that's still mint in box, it's like the figure itself is a relic. It's a time traveler. It travels through time without changing. It's as if this figure shouldn't exist in this condition, because this is exactly what it looked like in 1995 when it was released. But in a way, all the figures should be opened and played with and not look like this anymore. So this is it's as if it's moved through time without any alteration. And this is exactly what it looks like. So there's a nostalgic element to keeping it in the box. So that's another thing. And my friend Johnny from MIB Master Toy Museum, he displays his figures. And the mindset with that is, as an adult collector, in theory, if you're not going to play with your toys, now, of course, we're going to put me aside, because I do like to play with them and touch them and pose them. But theoretically, if you're an adult collector, you're just going to display the toy anyway. So if you're just going to display it, what better way to display it and showcase it than the way the original manufacturer wanted it to appear? It's already in its own custom display case when you leave it mint in box. So this is exactly the way it should be displayed to showcase its beauty, really. If you're just going to keep it on the shelf, it protects the figure, and it just looks great when it's in the box like this. So there's some of the reasons why you might want to keep your figures mint in box. But, like I said, I'm from the other school of thought. I like to take out the toys. You're limited. You can't see this figure from all angles. He's forever locked in this position and locked into this box. But I want to take him out and see him from every angle and touch him and get that tactile experience and smell him. And there's points of articulation. You can pose him. And it gives you the opportunity to put the accessories in his hand. Accessories make a figure. you know? So I like to take them out. At the end of the day, toys were made to play with. So the box isn't that important to me. Not really, you know? Sure, I can still display them, but I want to display him outside of the box to give me the freedom to change his poses when I feel like it, and to just get him in hand and check him out. But, you know, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Live and let live. If you pay for the figure, if you want to keep it mint in box, then that's what you should do. And if you're so inclined to take it out and take it out of the packaging and pose it and play with it, then that's what you should do. You know? Sometimes these collectors get into big fights online and otherwise as to what the best course of action is, especially Star Wars figures, but we're not going to go there. But toys are toys. In my opinion, they're meant to be played with. They're meant to get your hands on them. And you know, another thing, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but there's another YouTuber who I really admire. His name's Dave Moss. His YouTube channel is Toy Polloi, and he makes a very good point. He said that the passage of time will affect these figures whether they're in the box or not. You know, you just can't escape it. You just can't escape it. And, you know, especially, for example, G.I. Joe figures or any figures that are held together with an O-ring inside, over time, that O-ring will dry up and perish, and you'll end up with a mint in box or a mint on card figure that's just collapsed at the bottom of its packaging because the toy has fallen apart. Now that's going to happen whether the toy is in the box or out of the box. At least if it's out of the box, you have a chance of repairing it, you know. So you should enjoy your toys any way you want while you have them, but they're not going to last forever. So my mindset is take them out and play with them. But that's just me. To each their own. To each their own. So the reason why I guess I'm leaving this in the box, as I say, is because this particular uniform is not my favorite. So I have no burning desire to get him out and pose him and play with him. So I'm going to leave him mint in the box. I'm going to leave him like this. And I can pose my 4 other 9-inch figures around him. And I'll do a video about those figures down the road. I've got 2 other Picard figures. The one I've just showed you, which is, of course, Picard in his duty uniform. We'll talk about that. And I might even leave this out a little bit, because we're going to talk more about his accessories and things. I also have Picard in his first contact uniform, which is the gray and black one, which they use for the movies. I also have Lieutenant Commander Data. And I also have Q, as portrayed by John Delancey. So, card art. There's not much box art on these boxes. Starfleet Edition, Star Trek Collector's Series. There's a planet here. Exclusive Playmates Star Trek Space Cap included. And we have a star field there. You know, sometimes boxes have huge pictures of the figure as well. This just has kind of an artistic version of the comm badge there. Captain Jean-Luc Picard in dress uniform is featured in Star Trek The Next Generation. Now it's interesting too, you know, I guess this goes back to the mint in box or the loose figure argument. If you look in the center there, see how it says Collector's Series? They're trying to market it to collectors, to adults who intend to keep this mint in the box, because it's from the Collector's Series, as you can see. So, sure, They want adults to collect them and hold on to them because they might be worth something down the road. But at the same time, you'll see up in the corner here, it says ages 4 and up. So, they want kids to get into it and open it up too. Which I guess is smart on Playmates' part. Market to everybody, and then you make everybody happy. But it is a very attractive display. You can see what the box looks like. I'll show you the back in more detail. There's the side. I like how the window extends to the side of the packaging. You can get a nice profile of Patrick Stewart there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Star Trek Collector's Series, another planet here. Okay, there's the back of the box. Starfleet Edition. Star Trek Collector's Series. Exclusive Playmates Star Trek Space Cap included. I don't know what the point of that was, but we'll talk about that in a second. There's the prototype. That looks like a photograph of what the figure would look like. And it looks exactly as it appears, I think, in the package. Fully articulated figure. There he is on his stand. And there's that exclusive Playmates Star Trek Space Cap. I don't really understand what the point of that is inside there. It's like a little card, but that center section can pop out like a pog, if you remember those from back in the day. Here's some other figures in this initial line. So here's what we're looking at. Picard in his dress uniform. That's the Data that I have in his duty uniform. I don't have any of the others pictured here. I'd like to get my hands on Dr. Crusher and perhaps Geordi LaForge. But we also have Riker and the Borg, Kirk, Worf in this line. Not pictured here is my Q figure. And also Picard from First Contact. But the box looks great. If you are going to keep it in the box, you can see how the box plays an important role. Now, if you look closely at the likeness of the figure, I mean, it looks to me like Patrick Stewart. Considering this figure is almost 30 years old, it's almost 30 years old, I think Playmates did a fantastic job, not only on the uniform, but also on the likeness of Picard himself. That looks like Patrick Stewart. You can see even to the little dimple in his chin and his furrowed brow. He always looks stressed out. It's a lot of responsibility being the captain of a starship. You know the saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown. There's the profile. That looks like Patrick Stewart to me. You can see the gold piping on his uniform and his 4 captain pips there. And you can see how the pips are much lower compared to up on the Mandarin collar in his regular duty uniform. Head sculpts are identical, so you can see this really looks like Patrick Stewart. From all angles, really. That's him. And if you can capture the head sculpt is an important part of the figure, obviously. That looks like Patrick Stewart. It's very toyetic. I mean, the features are soft. But it's him. There's no question. It is Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. There's that space cap I was telling you about. It's like a cardboard card. I know the light's a bit bad on this, but you can see how the center section pops out there. So I don't know what the point of that was. Like a collector's pog. There's the base. And Playmates did a good job with the base too. They could have just used a black, round, circular plastic base, but they made the base look like the comm badge with Picard's name on it. I guess I can show you on this one a far better view of that. There it is. It's got Picard's name in it, and it looks exactly like the comm badge, only it's much bigger. There's a little peg in the base and a hole in his Starfleet boots, which allow him to peg in very firmly there, and he can stand up quite easily. I would imagine that all the Playmates figures stand up easily on their stand. My others sure do. And actually, to be honest with you, these Playmates figures stand up without the stand quite nicely. Like that. You can see it doesn't really need the stand. But the stand's a nice addition. You know. This is a 9-inch figure. And actually, with the stand, it brings them almost to 10 inches. You know. Almost 10 inches, which is the size of my foot. So that's amazing. He looks fantastic. 10-inch figure. There's, I think, it says fully articulated, but there are, I think, 9 points of articulation with these figures. The neck moves just back and forth. There's no up and down movement. The arms move at the shoulders, so there's 3. The elbows bend, so that's 5. There's no crunch or waist bend at all. But the hips, 6, 7, move, and the knees, 8, 9, they bend as well. So for $19.95, you know, that's all you need. 9 points of articulation. It's a 9-inch figure. Nowadays, of course, you get figures that are smaller with far more POA. 14 points of articulation, 25 sometimes more, really. But for a 9-inch figure, to have 9 points of articulation, that's plenty, in my opinion. They count that base as an accessory, but I don't know, it's just a base. Actually, the real accessories are right there. They're mentioned. Starfleet gear. Now, this is interesting. Look at this. Starfleet gear, but it says Starfleet monitor, which is the tricorder. I don't know why they just don't call it the tricorder, because that's exactly what it is. Starfleet gear, it says Starfleet monitor, which is the tricorder. The pad, personal access display device. And a Type 1 phaser. And see how they include the base itself as an accessory. So it's funny how they don't call the tricorder a tricorder here, and yet on the back of the box, they have no trouble calling it a tricorder. Look, Starfleet gear comes with tricorder for monitoring vital life functions and recording data. The pad, the personal access display device, which is what's in Picard's hand here, incidentally. That's a pad. That's Picard's pad. Type 1 phaser, small handheld weapon used by Starfleet personnel. And now, here, let's talk about that for a second. Here's the accessories. There they are. The pad, the tricorder, and the phaser. Pad looks great, as you can see. Here, let's take it out of Picard's hand here. This one looks identical to the one that came with my other figure. And that's the equivalent of, you know, what we would use as an iPad, really, or a tablet. It's got the acoudogram there. So that's the pad with some texturing at the back, so it fits nicely in his hands. You know, there's nothing worse than having a figure that won't hold on to their accessories, you know. So these figures have no trouble holding on to their accessories. So there's the pad. There's the tricorder. It's permanently in the open position. It doesn't fold shut, but it looks great. It's got paint details and a sticker accent as well, which looks nice. And there is the Type 1 phaser. You can see on the left there with the beam shooting out of it. They didn't use this phaser much. It showed up in the very first episode, Encounter at Farpoint. Very small thing to hold. Fans used to say it looked like a garage door opener. The nickname for that was the Cricket Phaser, the Type 1 Cricket Phaser. And Playmates has that beam coming out of the phaser. And I think they did it to make it look more dynamic. You can see how the beam is starting to blast out of the phaser. And also to make it bigger so it's not like a choking hazard. But I never liked the look of it with that beam coming out. You know, it reminded me too much of a lightsaber from Star Wars. You know, you see it like that. And when he's holding on to it, I wonder if he's holding on to this picture. No, he hasn't got it in his hand. But when the figure's holding on to it, it really looks like he's holding on to a lightsaber. Maybe they did that by design. Who knows? But certainly there were times that I got very tempted to cut right across the emitter and just throw that phaser beam away. But I never had the heart. Not on these 9-inch figures or my 4.5-inch figures. I mean, look at that likeness. Now, this is from 1995. There is another company, Mego, presently, who are making figures. Not quite this big. I think they're an inch shorter. They're 8-inch figures. But they make a Jean-Luc Picard. And, you know, I'm not here to talk about Mego. I'm here to talk about this particular figure. But I'm going to put up a couple of pictures, and you can judge for yourself. I mean, right there, those are a couple of shots, if I can get them both in, of the Mego figure. It's 8 inches. It's got a fabric uniform, just like this one. But the likeness, I don't know. To me, it's not quite there. You know? Just not quite there. I do like the belts, and I like that the phaser is hanging off the belt on the Mego figures. But the actual appearance of the figure itself, I prefer Playmates from 1995. Here is another shot in package of the Mego figure. It's nicely packaged, but I don't know. It's just not quite there, in my opinion. This, to me, looks great. Again, considering this is a 30-year-old toy, it looks fantastic. Captain Jean-Luc Picard in his Starfleet dress uniform. So, do you have this? Are there any other Trek collectors out there that has any of these 9-inch figures from Playmates? Or perhaps any of the other ones? I think this may have been the first wave. But it does look cool, and I'm very happy with it. And I think him being displayed right in the center with my 4 other figures on either side, that's a cool thing. He looks great. The color of the uniform, the sculpt, just everything about it. You can't really see the boots and the pants of this figure, but I'm quite sure they're identical to this. Starfleet issued pants with Starfleet issued boots, with a nice military shine to them. And of course, the little peg that I was telling you about that fits into the base. But yeah, Playmates did a fantastic job, in my opinion, with their 9-inch toys. So there you have it. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. You can see his comm badge is just sort of printed right onto the fabric. It would have been nice if it was a tiny plastic piece maybe glued on. I can see why they didn't do that. It's not very durable for the kids who are opening it and playing with it. And it would raise the cost of the figure. But certainly this looks great. That's what the comm badge looks like. Star Trek Collector Series, Jean-Luc Picard in his formal dress uniform. So there you have it, guys. As per the request of my friend, I talked about this figure. I could probably talk longer about it, but at some point I've got to draw the line. The line must be drawn here, this far, no further, as Picard himself said. There he is. Looks like he could use a cup of tea, Earl Grey hot, right at the moment. So I hope you enjoyed that. And keep in mind, there are 3 things to remember about being Paul Pacific. Keep your shoes and socks off. Maintain a youthful mindset. And enjoy playing with your Star Trek toys.